how I ended up here was pretty much going back to story of, high school when I started off door to door knocking. So getting the door slammed in my face definitely put on that tough skin right off the bat. And I think a lot of the experiences that I've had throughout the years is why I'm passionate about what we do at 𝐸𝐻𝐶𝐭. And in a matter of a 4 to 5 year span, I went from entry level business development to BDR manager, account executive, and ultimately a VP of sales. And probably promoted very prematurely, but I had a good leader that allowed me to learn from my mistakes and saw that I would continue to get after it. Once COVID ultimately hit, that's really just like Zoom Technologies in that moment where it kind of blew up, and so did our services. And we went from, I think, 25 employees in that time span to about 400, 450 plus.
You're probably one of the few cases where COVID actually boosted business quite a bit during that time.
And these companies had individuals who were coming on older demographic, which is, hey, look, how do I use Zoom Technologies? What do you mean I can use LinkedIn to outreach and connect with
Mm-hmm.
individuals? The individuals who say, look, with everything that all this uncertainty, let's take a step back. And they don't take action. Where you have other individuals who say, look, let's double down right now. You need to be able to put your ego aside. I think Lawrence gets a response and someone is like, I feel like they're yelling at him through the email. And Lawrence just says, no, they're interested. Don't worry, Mike. We should call them now. And that mindset is very rare to find. It's your ability as a salesperson to build up a brand and tell first-hand account point of view stories that is what's going to separate you from the rest.
Welcome back to Prospecting Pros. We have Michael Sanchez on the show. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Pleasure, John.
All right, Michael, what I'd like to do first is just learn a little bit about you and a little bit of your journey and how you got where you are today. So introduce yourself to the audience, tell people where you live, types of jobs you've been working in the past, and what you're currently doing today.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate it. So Michael Sanchez here in short. I'm originally from the Northeast New Jersey area, born and raised out there, went to Rutgers as well. As far as where I currently am today, I'm working with a company called 𝐸𝐻𝐶𝐭. And essentially, what we are at our core is a training consulting firm at heart. And how I ended up here was pretty much going back to story of, high school when I started off door to door knocking. So getting the door slammed in my face definitely put on that tough skin right off the bat. And I think a lot of the experiences that I've had throughout the years is why I'm passionate about what we do at 𝐸𝐻𝐶𝐭, which in short is, we're helping and working with C-levels and sales enablement revenue teams to generate conversations and improve conversion rates at various stages of the funnel. I think there's a big gap today in how companies go to market, where it's very product led, playbooks are very focused on talking about features and benefits as opposed to impacts and outcomes. And sales enablement is a term really that has only existed for the last 5 to 7 years, and people, I still think, don't do it right. And we at 𝐸𝐻𝐶𝐭 kind of help fill that gap.
So we're going to dive into 𝐸𝐻𝐶𝐭 a little bit more, but tell us about some of the roles you had leading up to this, because you have a lot of really good outbound business development experience. Walk us through some of the roles and some of the experiences you had at some of these companies to get you into the position you are today.
So I think here, when I look at the door-to-door knocking space, once I got past that, a lot of my experience came from, and I'll give Amir Ryder here a little bit of shout out at CloudTask, where I entered as what was an entry-level business development representative and was his first sales hire. And at that point, we were about 20, 25 employees, if I recall correctly. And in a matter of a 4 to 5 year span, I went from entry level business development to BDR manager, account executive, and ultimately a VP of sales. And probably promoted very prematurely, but I had a good leader that allowed me to learn from my mistakes and saw that I would continue to get after it. But it really, that's what it comes down to, is it catapulted my career. And this was about the age of, I think, 26 that all this happened, and ultimately got to learn a lot, which is, I want to try to create that path for other individuals as well.
In what year was this more or less when you started that? And was it remote that you were doing this work?
Yeah, so it started in office, and I think this is one of the things about sales is, we talk about business development and all strategies and tactics, but sometimes you do need the market to be able to be in a position to react to what the product you're selling and service you're providing. So this is going back to, I want to say, 2016, 2017, and what we were pitching at that moment was the concept of remote work, and the business was growing. But once COVID ultimately hit, that's really just like Zoom Technologies in that moment where it kind of blew up, and so did our services. And we went from, I think, 25 employees in that time span to about 400, 450 plus. And
That's a lot.
that's where a lot of the experience came from, because there was a lot of failing still in that
Mhm.
process.
I didn't realize, so this is that cloud task, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
This
I
was at a
didn't
cloud
realize you
test.
guys were that had that many people. Holy smokes.
Yeah, it grew a lot rapidly. It grew very, very, very rapidly. And this is one of those things where a lot of it became understanding of what did it take on the operational side to
Hmm.
kind of lift up what was a BD function. So learnings, and I think, level up. You're in a similar position. You've been seeing pretty good extensive year-over-year growth.
Yeah, we're doing really well, really well. We're roughly 55 people. And yeah, like one of the biggest challenges is when things are going really well is operationally fulfilling and not just fulfilling, but being ahead of it, right? So you can't just fulfill after you have the client. You need to have everybody up and hired and trained and ready to go by the time the client comes on. And so it's always staying one step ahead of business. And operationally removing myself is in the works, but it's also been a bit of a challenge. Just haven't quite done it before. I've been so involved in it, and now I'm trying to step out and create repeatable processes for the rest of the team. But yeah, we're at 55-ish, approaching 60 people. I just in the hundreds. It's just I can't imagine that, and I have to talk to Amir about that a bit more. Um, but that must have been a really good experience. And so you're probably one of the few cases where COVID actually boosted business quite a bit during that time.
Yes, I think it was definitely one of those situations where, despite everything that was going on around the world, there was a huge need for our service and our product because of what was going on. The individuals, we saw it, who were heavily reliant on getting on a car, going to knock on someone's door, you know, trying to set up a lunch or a dinner. All these plays that were being run from a business development perspective were pretty much just shut down by the world. And these companies, they had individuals who were coming on, older demographic, which is, hey, look, how do I use Zoom technologies? What do you mean I can use LinkedIn to outreach and connect with individuals?
Hmm.
Just yesterday I was meeting with a 78-year-old broker who, he been doing deals since he was in his late 20s, but you know, the dynamic has shifted so much, and that's what kind of COVID and the opportunity they presented
Yeah.
for cloud test in
I,
that moment.
Before Level Up Leads, I was working at a different lead gen agency, and this is before COVID and during COVID. And we immediately saw like half of our clients turn off because of COVID and everything froze, and people were like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." But because we were in a similar line of work as you guys, everyone after they kind of panicked, they're like, "Well, I still need sales, and I can't go necessarily face to face with these people. So and it's cheaper to outsource. So a lot of like in-house salespeople were getting let go. So naturally they outsourced just like with you guys. And actually our business tripled during COVID, just like with you guys. We went from like 25 up to, I don't remember exactly, but it was roughly 75 people before I left. And it's just crazy the swing of going down and then actually benefiting from COVID.
Those swings are something that I don't miss as much, especially when you're starting out. And I think what you just described there is key, right? Because I think we're going through it right now in our situation with the tariffs and all these external conversations that are impacting business on a day to day. You get two types of individuals. The individuals who say, "Look, with everything, all this uncertainty, let's take a step back." And they don't take action, where you have other individuals who say, look, let's double down right now, because this is where, some lack of a term, blood is in the water, so where money's made. And I think that's where you saw some of the companies who adapted to it quicker and adopted to it quicker, just like AI. They saw some of the results, and they're set up a lot better now.
And now a lot of people are working remotely and still are, but now you're seeing a push for a lot of people. A lot of companies are pushing for people to go back to the office. So it's all coming full circle.
Yes, yes. What's your take on office policy? Because as you see, I'm in an office, but being transparent, I was remote for the last 4 years, but I had personal reasons that I did it for. But I always felt like you do your best work in an office at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think we talked about this when we got coffee last year, towards the end of
Hmm.
last year. I think teams are more productive in person. I like being at home. working. So I do like the flexibility and I just of being at home and or whatever. I can go leave the house, go to the store, go to the gym, make food at home. I just like the comfort, but I do think as a team, a hybrid situation would be ideal in my book. Now my team's dispersed across different, mostly in USA time zones, but there's not too many of us right next to each other, so it's tough. But we do try to meet up when possible. I do like the face to face, even if it's not we're not working right next to each other, just that camaraderie and getting to know each other a bit more.
Yeah, and I think that's even more difficult when you're remote all the time. And I think the idea of when I always looked at BD, and this is we would in my previous roles, we would hire cohorts, as you're saying, so that they'll be ready for the client when they're going to come on board of 15 to 20 individuals and train them all together. And what I thought was unique, there was a certain sense of camaraderie that would be built within these pods. And, I just remember, thinking 4 or 5 years ago, it's like, oh, I'm from cohort number 6 or 7. It's like, oh, yeah, that's our cohort. And they almost kind of bang their chest. And I think, at least for the onboarding purposes, there is a little bit of that misery loves company. So when we do it together, there's a bond that's formed essentially, which is cool to see.
Yeah, it's I think as bigger as teams are, bigger remote teams, as they grow, they have to create something to
Yes.
create some type of team atmosphere. Like for us internally, there's like roughly 35 SDRs, and so what we did is we created 5 different teams, and they all compete against each other
I love it.
in a good way. So they're doing the work for the clients, but they're competing against each other, and at the end, the team that wins or has the most meetings gets a cash prize. It's like but it's like otherwise you're just kind of at home by yourself, and it gets lonely. There's like anything doesn't mean what we're doing is the best or it's going to work for all companies, but something like that to get
Yeah.
people together uh, is nice.
I love that idea. I think the only challenge as I was thinking, because I think operationally here, it's like, how do you balance between some of these clients that you work with at times that have a better inbound lead flow and, they're booking more meetings easier than some of these individuals who are targeting these enterprise clients. But I love that team dynamic of getting them to compete together towards working towards a common goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's not perfect because you have a different clients, and it's just different goals. Each client has different goals, and so one client may need one meeting a week, others may need 4 or 5, and it's very difficult. But you do your best to make the teams as even as possible.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense. When I look at the dynamic, and one of the things I always thought about that could be working, and it's a little bit controversial because some people don't want to have it, one salesperson representing two different accounts, let's say in the world we work in. But I've always been a believer if you have an individual who understands the process of, highlighting pain points, using social consensus for customer stories, would you want them representing two accounts because of the AI functions that we have now? Could they do 4 hours on one, get the results they need, and then 4 hours on the other account? What's your take on having one salesperson work two separate accounts?
I have no problem with it. It's part of our model. We have a fractional SDR model, so they know that it's not
Okay.
just them, right? So we try to be transparent about that. And each SDR is also they're willing to put in a certain amount of work. Like everyone's situation is different. Some want to work as much as possible and make as much money as possible, and others don't. Just say, hey,
Oh, I
I'm
like
good
that.
with 4 or 5 hours a day, and so you just kind of got to know. You obviously take that person when they're high quality, like they have experience, so you can
Mhm.
kind of sacrifice a little bit. So at least our model is, look, everybody's a little bit different. We obviously want somebody working a full-time schedule, but if I can get somebody that's experienced and I know they're going to do a good job, even if they're only willing to take on less clients, doesn't matter. The clients are going to be happier, right? They're getting a higher quality product or
Yeah.
service, I should say.
I come from that same school of thought, and I always think back to there was a salesperson who was on my team, individual named by Mateo, who just was really good, and I didn't have to worry about any will issues. I know if I asked this individual, hey, look, we need to be at X activity, and I was able to kind of almost use him as a flex play and support certain accounts. And hey, this account we're some behind on some of the numbers. Go look to support them. Go work them through your process. And I think that also is when you see almost internal employees that represent, let's say, level up, they begin to help the accounts. I think that also builds up that camaraderie because it's like, oh, hey, look, these individuals are here to support. We're all here to win together. And I remember people would be like, oh, thanks so much for sending Mateo over to work with us because he really helped us out.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. We're actually doing the same thing, um, just with the wide range and amount of clients we work with. Sometimes you start and there's not you come out of the gates and it's a little flat. You're not quite getting traction, and so what we'll do is we'll add on another SDR, typically an experienced one at no cost, so they can one give their input on what needs to be adjusted,
Yes.
and two, then you can also come back if for whatever reason things don't pick up. You can go back to the client. You're like, look, I added on a senior SDR at no charge, and the results are the same. Here, we either need to change the targeting, we need to change the messaging. Like you're at least eliminating one of the factors, right?
Yes.
And then you can go back to the client. So it's a great idea. It's of course it's at cost to us, but at least you're now eliminating one thing, and then you can move forward with potentially the actual issue.
But even if it's a cost to you, like you're talking about, one thing my experience has shown me is, look, we all know we're hired to get results and book the meetings, but there is also just as much value in figuring out what is not working and then
Hmm.
creating a path and a direction with your client after the fact. I've had clients where we've been in a timeline. I know we did sales calls that look at around 3 month 4, this is what we expect, but because we did so much work in understanding and diagnosing within those first three, we weren't at the metrics we wanted to be, but we ideally determined, okay, look, we're building momentum, so why change the cart right now?
Hmm.
So provide good work and word of mouth spreads.
This episode is sponsored by Level Up Leads, a B2B sales development and appointment setting agency. Companies always need pipeline, but they oftentimes don't want to hire SDRs internally. The whole process is risky and expensive. You've got hiring costs, onboarding, training, additional spend on your tech stack, a few months to ramp up. And with that being said, SDRs are a high turnover position, and the person you hire might not necessarily work out, so you need to start all over again. That's why companies outsource this. Level Up Leads allocates a team of people, their tech stack, so you can onboard and launch your campaigns in about a week. They set qualified meetings in your calendar so your team has more selling opportunities. Visit levelupleads.io today to learn more. All right, now back to the show.
Yeah, I agree. It's also, when companies sign up to work with us, they don't always, actually, a lot of times they don't have it figured out. They're still trying to learn what's resonating. And so, we're very thankful when our clients are aware of this, that they realize it's actually, there's a lot of value in the discovery. And we can come back to them with like, hey, actually, this title is in your ICP. They are continuously pointing us to other departments.
Yep.
That might be somewhat a title you might want to remove moving forward. And so like things like that, it's a very valuable. So whether they're working with us or hire someone internally, they now have that information.
And that stuff
Um,
what goes up to the advisors and the boards.
yeah, which is actually very important, even though you may never speak to them. They're also making the decisions.
And they're a lot more involved in the process these days than they have been historically. So
So, okay, so we're talking about Cloud Task a bit. After Cloud Task, did you go directly to Growth Genies? Am I saying it right? Growth Genie?
Growth Genie,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So from my experience at Cloud Task, I think it was one of those things where you naturally see the progression of an internal employee that says, "Hey, I kind of want to begin to branch out on my own and do this and see if I could replicate the process." And the beauty of it is that Mikey Hansen, my CEO who founded Growth Genie, he actually was at Cloud Task as well. He was the VP of marketing. He worked more on the marketing side, more with our chief operating officer, and I, as I mentioned, was the VP of sales. So he had stepped away about a year prior before I made the leap. And it was one of those things where I, the biggest change and really the only change that I saw moving from Cloud Task to Growth Genie was we no longer were providing what was the activity and the business development representatives or the SDRs, sales development representatives, as some people call them, but it's we're gonna begin to work with your team internally. So we take a lot of the process we had learned and the failings of structuring out a playbook, sequences, and enabling the team just how to have a conversation with your persona and not about the product.
Do you ever work with teams? So you go in, you're helping internal teams, but they don't have the team built out yet. So like early stage founder, or do they always have sales teams that you're going to be going in and helping and coaching?
Yeah, so we have two types of clients when it comes to the size of the sales team. We always want to work with somebody who has a sales team established. We wouldn't want to work with anybody who has a sales team smaller than 5 individuals.
Okay.
When I look at, you know, our, one of our clients today, Concept 3D. They are about 60 employees in total. They sell what is virtual tours, virtual maps for a lot of big universities like Colorado, Alabama, and they also work with the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. There I'm working with a small team, really a lot more individualized, a lot more consultative. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is our largest client, which is John Long LaSalle, I think the second or third biggest real estate publicly traded Fortune 500. And I've been working with over 500 brokers with them in the last 3 years. So really with them though, it's not so much about instilling processes, but working with senior individuals who know what they're doing and now just kind of showing them more modern ways on how to get the attention of their clients because there's so much noise these days and it's only going to
Hmm.
get worse.
A lot of things are changing too. Yeah.
What have you seen as the biggest change on your end from a BD perspective?
Email is definitely not working like it used to. I think that used to be a reliable channel, and we still recommend it to our clients because it still can work, but it's not something an org can just, oh yeah, we don't hit the phones. No, we just do email. No, it's just like that. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, and all the people I'm talking with are doing something wrong, but it seems like that's the direction. That's kind of the biggest thing, and I have my reasonings, and we could get into it, but it's a saturated channel. I just think it's less effective than before.
Yeah, I think we've definitely seen that as well. And it shocked me because like I understood that that the channel was saturated, but I don't think I understood to what volume. When I was speaking to a CEO, one of our clients, she actually said to me, Mike, at my previous firm, I used to receive 5 to 700 emails on a daily basis. Daily. So I'm there like, well,
Jeez.
how are you going to stand out? Like, of course, your copy could be good, and you and I as leaders could be banging our heads on, look, is the copy the right place? Is the ICP? But it's not even. It's getting buried at the end of the day.
Yeah.
What I do see though, where when I do see responses, and I've seen responses as high as anywhere from the range of 5 to 15%, depending on what the market looks like. Right now, I'm running a campaign where we actually are seeing about an 8% email reply rate. But we're not asking for meetings. We're just sharing content. Because I've seen
Hmm.
that, as you're saying, the reply rates are lower than ever. So just use the channel more as information sharing
Hmm.
versus trying to book a meeting. Let me ask for 30. Let me ask for 30. Because that's a huge gap that I see.
Yeah. Just another touch point is very effective. Um, so this question just popped into my head. When you go and are training teams today, are you consulting them, and maybe it's a mix, but are you consulting them more so on the strategic aspect or also the tech stack aspect and how they can improve that part to be better at sales? Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, so it's definitely a combination of both. And I guess I'll tackle it. I'm curious your opinion when you look at what you're defining strategically as well too. Is I think right now the biggest gap that I see is strategically teams have gold mines at times when it comes to either former clients who are at a different company, a network event that you're all part of, or a network group you're all part of, when it comes to building their lists. I see teams today, the biggest gap strategically is they'll build a list of 100 people that they're going to call and email. And that list is going to have 3 to 4 different personas. It's going to have different industries. And that is what I'm seeing is where I'm coming in and say, hey, look, let's create our buckets of who we're going after, make sure they're all in the same industry, we're targeting the same persona. And that is where I'm making a strategic impact. From that aspect, we create the messaging. And then it's the tools in this tech stack is how can you help us with the previous two things that we're doing? Whether that be using a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Zoom Info, or if there aren't internally existing, making recommendations of what you should be utilizing.
Mhm. Do you ever have to, like, will you ever listen to what they're saying on a call and help them with scripts? That
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm listening to call recordings, and this is not even just call recordings at the top of the funnel. Like I just got off a session earlier today where individual brought a call recording. His observation up at the top, his intro was spot on. You got the individual asked like, yeah, it resonates with me. He struggled more on the objection handling piece and using social consensus to close the individual out. So listening that and also discovery calls. So I got a good checklist that I run through, making sure how people do good discos because as buyers, sometimes salespeople just talk at us.
Your engagements with companies, is it you do long-term engagements so you can help out over a long period of time, or is it sometimes just short bursts?
So really, I think with the smaller firms that we talk about, let's say 50 to 100, I think a big value prop for them is that flexibility and working in kind of those short bursts and being able to measure. But when I look at, our clients like JLL, some of our larger ones, we are getting kind of what are those long year commitments because it's really working with leadership and the team to get the methodology first. And really the first 3 months you're working on behavioral change
Hmm.
more than anything. And then from there is now you've got them and bought into the process. What does it look like 6 to 9 months after as far as generation? A lot of it is depending how long the sales cycle is. We can't work with a client 3 month burst, but then their sales cycle is 9 to 12 months.
Yeah, makes sense. And is it all done? It's just a question to you. Can it be done remote or is it in person or preference to the company?
It's a preference of the company. The beauty is I am based out of Medellin, and I think it's the benefit of not living in Europe or the other side of the country, which is I could take a short 3-hour flight over and be in Miami, and next week I'll be in New York visiting a client and doing a workshop to kick off the program.
And is it just you or is there more people involved in delivering the training?
So there is a counterpart. Her name is 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞𝐿, who is look at her revenue enablement on the European side. So she handles and kind of covers that market. And my CEO, Michael Hansen, kind of makes sure and oversees. He'll wear the CEO hat and also the COO hat, as I imagine you're doing. That's what you're saying. You're trying to implement those processes and take a step back. So, and then we have our colleague Lawrence Jackman, who does our BD. And Lawrence Jackman is someone who's been doing BD for over 40 years, and I've now been working with him for over 10. And
Wow,
if there's one thing I've learned from Lawrence in the last 10 years, because he also came from the Cloud Task family, which is you need to be able to put your ego aside. I think Lawrence gets a response, and someone is like, I feel like they're yelling at him through the email, and Lawrence just says, "No, they're interested. Don't worry, Mike. We should call them now." And that mindset is very rare to find. What
nice.
about you? What are you seeing some of the biggest challenges from an operational perspective as you go to take a step back? Because I think there's a big transition that companies, when I see where they're that 50 to 80 employee range, they're really founder-led sales. And if you want to go to that 100 to 300, that was one of the biggest things I learned at Cloud Task was how could we take what my CEO Amir was doing and really break it down so, we had now 5 or 6 of us doing this.
About 2 weeks ago, I hired a head of operations, something I should have done 6 months ago. And it's just luckily I have a really good CEO coach and he's helping me through some things and giving me perspective. And he's already retired, so he's done everything. He said you're not going to face a single question or situation I haven't already faced myself.
Multiple times, I imagine.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, multiple times. So yeah, it's removing myself from day-to-day operations. It's not like I was day-to-day, but it's still there was always little things operationally that were flowing through me. Just little things like approval for a Google Sheet. Might go to my email and I just click approve, but like that doesn't need to go to me. Like, and so just like rerouting some of these things is what I'm in the process of. And just as you grow, you have to come up with processes on hiring, firing, also updating processes, like actual like the documenting SOPs. There's a lot that goes into growth of a company. So when you hear people say growing pains, like yeah, it's true. It's a lot of great things, right? But it's still you're trying to grow and fulfill the back end and also high quality, right? It's not like you want to give a half-ass job. You want the clients to stick around, of course, and the longer they do, the more really the happier everybody is. Yeah, really happy with the hire, and I should have done it a long time ago.
What were the reservations before that? Because you mentioned 6 months ago you should have done it, and I guess you walked me through that process. I'm curious. It's like what led you eventually to pulling the trigger?
Honestly, just not thinking about it. Just thinking like, hey, you're kind of just in it doing the work. I had someone already in sales and still do, but just rather than me being pulled in a lot of different directions. And plus, it's not really my strength either. So just getting, yeah, it was not like I was trying to hold off for various reasons. It's more so like the awareness of it.
Yeah, it's very
So
interesting because these are things that our buyers, I imagine, are going through, and people say, "Hey, now's not the right time," or "This isn't a priority," right? Like you're touching base on it. It's like I was what I almost call it lost in the sauce. To be in you're in working in the business, it's just like, oh, this is how I've kind of done it, so I'm just going to continue to do it this way.
let's see. I had another question for you. Sorry to put the spotlight back on you, but I'm curious. You get the privilege of going in, and these companies are essentially open up their books for you to go in and see all the goods and the bads. What are you seeing, like any common threads you see across teams that in 2025 that need help? What are some of the common threads?
I think the biggest one that I see is, and this is not as much of a problem in the SaaS space, because I think you have managers that say you have a certain activity metrics and numbers to meet, is how do you as an individual prioritize business development along with all the work you're doing? And this is something that's coming across more consistently, because when companies began to really shrink down their sales teams about year 2 years ago with everything that was going on, that load of BD went from an entire role, business development or sales development, shifted over to the account executive. Now, I work with account executives daily, and I've been on hundreds of these calls, and a constant thing I hear is, or excuse ultimately is, oh, I don't have time to do business development or prospect. I have all these calls, I need to do follow-ups. And that is still the lifeline of a business. And I just think it's a weak excuse. What are some of the challenges I've seen is people don't have the confidence to do it. A lot of it's because of the amount of rejection they're going to be receiving. Others is they don't have confidence in their lists because they're being told, hey, this is your target list. But they say, well, this list is junk. Tale as old as time. Salespeople complain about their leads. And I think the last one that I see is from a messaging perspective, a lot of individuals just rush to tell what is the outcome of their product and solution, as opposed to really trying to give the buyer something first. They're always withdrawing. Hey, want to meet for 30. Hey, want to meet for 30. And I think those are the two things that stick out that are just killing what is the market today. But curious,
Mhm.
what do you see on your end from your clients and trends?
Yeah, that first thing that sticks out is the commission breath, what you're describing. Well, ours is a little bit different because we're not necessarily going into companies and implementing in-house since we're an external solution, but we do plug in with their current process. The biggest thing is no matter how buttoned up a company looks based off their size and marketing and success, a lot of the companies aren't. You go in, some of these companies are very well known, some of them are not,
Mhm.
and they're just a mess internally. You're like, it's literally no better than some of these like smaller companies. Like I think more than you'd think, companies are still trying to figure it out. And it's just because there's ever, people coming in, meaning someone leaves, someone gets fired, a new person comes in, still trying to figure it out. Things aren't documented well. It's like that's the biggest thing I see is like you'd think everyone has it figured out based on maybe the perception, but most times they don't. They have a very clunky handoff process or sales process. Some of it's security related, but that is so those are some of the surprises I see across the teams we work with. Also, here, let me
Yeah.
add one more. You'd be surprised at how many people they're like don't even have a calendar link.
Oh,
When it's like, what do you mean you don't have a calendar link? Or they like don't follow through. Like we've set meetings for clients, they don't show up to the meetings, and it's just like, come on.
I that is one where I still haven't figured out what is a logical explanation, and I've heard it come up multiple times. And you even see LinkedIn posts about this as well too, which is I booked a demo on a website, I requested, and the individual didn't show up. And this is why buyers are choosing their own process now, and they're forcing us to adjust how they buy versus us being able to put them into our sales process. But that is a funny one, not having a calendar link. You'd be shocked too as well. Yeah, it's a good one, man.
Some, yeah, some don't, which is weird. Okay, I wanted to wrap this up. Anything you want to share about what you're up to today? Anything to share with the audience or where they can find you?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. Michael Sanchez, I try to post. And when I think about the biggest thing in the future of where I see it, look, I think AI is going to have its massive impacts. Automation, I think, is still here to stay. But I think it's your ability as a salesperson to build up a brand and tell first-hand account point of view stories that is what's going to separate you from the rest. I think there's so much fake news out there and so much information you don't know what to trust. But when you're able to reference names and stories, I think that's what's going to be the difference. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Check out our website, growthgenie.co. And yeah, those are pretty much the two main areas.
All right, I will put the links to your LinkedIn and maybe the website as well. in the show notes. If you have a sales team of more than 5 people and you need some help, reach out to Michael and he'll be able to have a call and see if his service is a good fit for you guys. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, sharing some insights over the past, I guess, almost 10 years. But until next time, thank you.
Always happy to. Cheers.